Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we meet today one of the best European and Balkan researchers in computer science to discuss with him various topics in virtual promotion of cultural heritage preservation and data flow supercomputing. Professor Milutinoviç is member of the Department of Computer Engineering School of Electrical Engineering, University of Barleti, Fellow of IEEE, Institute of Electrical and Electronical Engineering, member of European Academy, member of Serbian Academy of Engineering Sciences, member of the Scientific Advisory Board of Maxwell, member of the Scientific Advisory Board of Moscovite-Jacobs, single designer of the most sophisticated multiprocessors, co-architect and co-designer of the world's first 200 MHz microprocessors for DARPA, published in IEEE Transactions on Computers, completed about a decade before Intel, back in early 80s. Creator of the vertical migration microprocessor architecture in 90s, published in IEEE Transactions on Software Engineering, for which he was awarded Fellow of the IEEE. He was a member of the advisory board or active advisor in a number of high-tech companies, Technology Connect, Honeywell, Fairchild, Intel, Sun, etc. He has about 2,000 Google Scholar citations. His high index is over 20 and his G index is over 40. Professor Milutinović taught courses for credits or obligatory lectures for graduate students at a number of universities in Europe: Ljubljana, Pisa, Salerno, Valencia, Barcelona, Darmstadt, Dortmund, the USA, MIT, Stanford University, and in Tokyo, in Japan, etc. He taught regular grad courses at various universities in the world in 7 different languages: English, German, Serbian, Russian, Polish, Spanish, and Italian, and gave short, invited lectures in 3 more: French, Czech, and Swedish. For about a decade, on various faculty positions at one of the top 5 US universities in the field of computer engineering, this is Purdue University. Author and co-author of over 50 IEEE and ACM journal papers. Over 20 books published by the leading USA publishers, Wiley, Prentice Hall, North Holland, IEEE, CS Press, etc., in 3 of them a single author. Actually, he teaches courses in computer architecture, data mining, and research management. Professor Milutinović, dear sir, members of academic staff of Marin Barleti University, professors, researchers from other universities all around Albania, high responsibilities of important state administrative sectors of culture and IT are today present in this meeting before you, in face of you, and ready to hear you. Dear sir, welcoming you, I wish you to take the floor, please. Thank you.
Thank you, who really likes and respects the Albanian nation a lot. My first visit to Albania was in, believe it or not, 1958. When my father and his friend, who was the president of Montenegro in those days, got a permission to pass somewhere around Vermosh and visit their good friend deep in the mountains of around Vermosh for 2 days. And I remember the pictures from that visit very vividly. 5 years ago, I met in Belgrade the Dean of Mathematics and Computer Science and Sciences of Scotland. And he asked me if I can come help them teach for 5 years. I said I will do it with the pleasure. So this is my 5th year that I'm coming to Skoda to teach students in mathematics and science and computer science. And I've done that for a number of reasons. First, as I have said, I really respect your nation. Second, I was curious to learn more about a nation that was forbidden to visit for so many decades. And number 3, because one of my relatives was the first Prime Minister of Albania. The maiden name of my mother was Dodic. And we knew that the grandfather of her grandfather was a Doda who came from Oroš in Milutinović, north to Serbia. Over the time he became a Serb. And we were keeping the awareness of that in our family for generations. And also there is an interesting story related to the year 1916. My grandfather on the mother's side was an army general in Serbia. He was on the top of the cavalry, horsepower. And some of you may know that in 1916 the Serbian army was moving through Albania all the way to Corfu in Greece and then fighting back from Thessaloniki. So while he was passing through Oroš, he called for who was the major of the city in those days. And that was Prank Big Doda. They hugged each other because Prank Big also had an awareness that a part of the tribe went north to Serbia at one moment. And all the soldiers were sleeping in the village for one night, and they got food for 3 nights, and then they continued. And even here now I have a picture with I had shown with a pleasure to your director that my grandfather got from Prank Big Doda, and Prank Big Doda became the first Prime Minister of Albania in 1918, as you know.
Yes.
And unfortunately, he was killed in 1919.
After that.
So coming here, I was also curious to see the mountains of Albania, which I did, Feti and Jezerca and all that stuff. So I'm really happy that now I have an opportunity to speak before all of you. And I'm one of those who believe that each Serbian has some Albanian blood, but also that most Albanians also do have some Serbian blood. And I wish we become brotherly nations in the future without never any conflict. Yeah, and as I have mentioned in the beginning, behind these 3 formal reasons, there was one which was above all 3, which was giving my small contribution to the re-establishment of trust and love, in Balkans. Today I will be talking on 2 different subjects. The first one is about digital preservation of national heritage. The second one is about supercomputing for cloud. A very specific type of supercomputing for cloud applications. In my first presentation, I'm actually a co-author of 2 more researchers. Hermann Maurer also a member of European Academy, was working for years on the Austria Forum, which is a portal for digital preservation of Austrian heritage. And myself, for a number of years, I was working on the same type of problems in Belgrade, in Serbia. So we decided to team together so that some of the stuff we developed in Serbia becomes available to Austria Forum, and some of the stuff they developed there becomes available to Serbia Forum. And we started together a project with participation from a number of other nations, with the goal of creating the forum technology that we will make available free of charge to any European nation. It is now full-blown as Austria Forum, with about 1 million artifacts, with about 1 million pages of Austrian history digitized. And we now have the Serbia Forum with about 2 million pages of Serbian history digitized. And we are now trying to bring that technology to a number of other nations. Some people from Germany are now porting the forum technology for a specific presentation of the German literature. Some people in Slovenia are doing the same. In Montenegro, currently, the Institute for History of Montenegro is porting a copy as well. And my major motivation now to talk about the forum technology here is because, if you like, you can have the whole technology free of charge as Albania Forum. You will see later the full list of countries that have expressed the interest, and we are now working together on doing that. Because you know about the European projects. First it was FP7, now it's Horizon 2020. In the projects that helped us do that, we signed up. Once we develop everything, we will give out for free our technology to whoever likes to use it, either for the total national heritage, which is the case in Austria and Serbia and Montenegro, or for some critical aspects not yet fully covered, which now we have the situation about in Slovenia, in Germany, also in Switzerland. Some may ask, why another technology when we have Wikipedia around? And that's available in many languages. It's the fact that in English you have more than 4 million entries now. In German, this much. In Serbian language, over 200,000 entries, which is a lot, which makes the Serbian language number 3 in the Wikipedia structure as far as how much you have per capita. However, most entries in local languages don't concentrate on the local culture. For example, in Serbian language you have about London or Paris. Most of the 200,000 entries are related to the worldwide heritage, not to the national heritage. So, you understand, there is a strong need to develop the so-called heritage portals or heritage servers. there are some facts which are very important for heritage preservation. Number one, information must be semantically searchable. In Wikipedia, you search by syntax. You type what you like to find, you get it. We need semantic search. For example, we may like to learn about someone, we don't remember the name, but we know he was a famous physicist, born in Vienna and died in Italy. In Wikipedia, if you write that, you get nothing. In our form technology, if you do that, you get Boltzmann, Ludwig Boltzmann, and you get a story about him. And this is, in essence, a form of semantic search. Number two, we need the author visibility. If you go to Wikipedia, you don't know who wrote that text. And I like to know who wrote the text that I'm reading. Because if that was George, then I will trust it. If that was Jack, then I'm not sure. Here, for the heritage portals, the author visibility is extremely important. So once you read something, you can also read who wrote it. And you can read about that person. So you can judge, how much to trust and what weight to give to the facts. You don't have that in Wikipedia. Tracking of evolution is really important. We want our kids to know how the streets of Tirana looked a year ago, a decade ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. You don't have that type of tracking in Wikipedia, but here you do. For example, this is the National Theatre of Austria, Vienna. You can see how it looked in various time periods. Books are probably the major source for this type of story. So it's very important to have a good technology for treatment of the book contents. In the form technology, you can click to open a book to an arbitrary page. You can use icons to make it more comfortable. Once you choose a single page, you can zoom in and zoom out and move it around arbitrarily. You can do text search. You can do bookmarking, creation of links to the other pages in the other books. If some village is mentioned someplace, you may like to see how that village looks now. So you can have in there video clips or sound clips. You can zoom in and zoom out. This is all the features that you don't find in Wikipedia, but you do find in the Fori software, in packages, which are now full-blown for European Academy. In Europe, you have a number of academies of science. But there is only one that was created by the Royal Society, which is, what Newton created back in centuries ago. So I'm talking about that academy, Academia Europea. And as I have said, it's fully operational now, not only with as a Serbia forum or as Austria forum, but also as the Academia Europea, and efforts, either broadband or narrowband, are going in a number of different countries, hopefully in Albania as well. This is how the entry page for Serbia forum looks in our language. However, everything I mentioned so far is something that others can reproduce easily. So, when talking about the heritage preservation, I tend to divide the advantages of the foreign approach into two categories. One is the category of secondary axioms, and the other one is the category of primary axioms. The secondary axioms are temporary differences compared to Wikipedia, which may disappear over time. All four advantages that we have now, if they are good, sooner or later they will disappear, right? That's so logical. Semantic search, author visibility, evolution tracking, and all original commodities in there. If they are really good, as we believe they are, sooner or later others will do them as well. However, there are things, I refer to them as primary axioms, that will stay forever as an advantage of a forum-type approach compared to the Wikipedia-type approach. Let's see what these are. Number one, once you give something over to Wikipedia, you are losing control over it. You don't lose control over the originals, which may sit in museums of the nation, but you lose control of the copies. Right? Here, everything is fully under control of the national institutions. Period. Number two, in the case of Wikipedia, the intellectual property is protected by only one type of legal mechanism, which is called CC, Creative Commons. For the forum technology, each institution for each particular item can create a different type of protection mechanism. And of course that has to be labeled clearly. Next, we are putting stress on quality and ranking, not quantity and chaos. For example, if I go to Wikipedia and I like to see what are the best 10 artifacts in the National Museum of France, I can't do that. But here, each institution is asked to select what are the top 10. So if somebody is rush, and modern people typically are, they can go there and click to the top 10 and see what is the top 10, and then they run away. Which cannot be done by definition in a portal like Wikipedia, because you have to have a governing unit that can decide. And you don't have that distributed. And also, here we are introducing something that is kind of culture-oriented translation. If you translate something in Google, you get some translation. But that translation may be understandable to people in one nation, not to people in another nation. For example, if the title of some artifact includes the word Pasha, for an Albanian or a Serb, you don't have to translate. But then you have to have a link for a German speaker or Japanese speaker and so on. The existence of foreign software packages in a number of different nations can help a specific type of data mining to blossom, which is called heritage mining. What is heritage mining? If we deal with the historical basis, we know politics which is existing not only today but was existing for thousands of years in the back. And some of the facts have been changed. Some of the facts have been put in which did not exist. Some of the facts were taken away, although they did exist. How you find it thousands of years later? The only way to find it is if you do heritage mining over the 40 in a number of different nations. You cross-correlate, but you can do that only if you do have this type of technology all over. You cross-correlate, you find the differences, and then you apply algorithms. And then you find interesting things. This is something that you may like to, as an interesting story. We applied the heritage forum, the heritage mining, to Serbia forum. And we have found some very interesting things there. In heritage mining, which is a special case of memory-based reasoning, the algorithm works as follows. In some database, either a local database or the internet, you first look for generations of data. And then you try to find some kind of distance in some matrix between the generations. Well, what I did, I looked into the difference between myself and my sons. The average was about 27. Looked into the differences between my sons and their children. I have some grandchildren. My ideal is that my family becomes like an Albanian family. Also about 27 plus minus 1. I looked back to my uncles, about the same. On my wife's side, about the same, plus minus 1 or 2. Well, the algorithm says memory-based reasoning also, and heritage mining as well. Once you find that distance, you fix it. And then you link yourself with an event that has, mathematically speaking, a high level of entropy. I started with 1912. Why? Because in that year, a series of wars started in Balkans. Turkish War, Bulgarian War, and then the First War in 1914. Then the algorithm says add 27. This is what you get. What started in 1939? World War I, World War II. Right. You'd add 27. 1966. What was there? Well, Vietnam War started in that year, but that's not of importance for us. What was important for us is that in that year a number of student uprisings started all over Balkans. Maybe not in Albania because we were protected in those days from that type of happenings. Then you add 27, you get how much? War in Bosnia. And no wars in between. Then you add 27. So the expectation is that some non-trivial political instability will happen in 2020. I hope data mining will not work. Also in 2047, which I don't care about. But some of you may care. Well, according to this algorithm, if you like to know how good is this prediction, you have to go backwards. In 1885, which is minus 27, there was a war between Serbia and Bulgaria. And no wars in between. 27 years before that, 1858, change of dynasty with loss of blood.
Change of?
Dynasty. In this year, Serbia got independence from Turkey. Hatisheriff number 1 and Hatisheriff number 2. And then, 27 years before that, the uprisal started. The big uprisal. So, looks like the prediction here is pretty good. This is why I paid for my company domain only until 2020. So this is an example, just an anecdotic example. Let's view this as an anecdotic example of what it is, heritage mining, and how one can benefit from it. I have a number of other examples. And also, I like to stress in this way what is the enabler technology for heritage mining. And enabler technology is the existence of the heritage forums all over Europe. Well, in some cases we gave away for free, of course, as I have said, the forum software, and nothing happened. So we learned something from those cases. So now we give it away under certain conditions. Condition number 1 is that the government of the country assigns to the given university or whoever 2 half-time PhD job positions only for forum. 2 PhD students that will work their PhD half-time and babysitting the forum technology for the other half-time. So this is the condition number 1. Condition number 2 is that the 2 persons plus 2 of the major decision makers, seniors, come to Belgrade to stay for 3 days so that we teach the kids, the PhD students, how to do it. And in the same time we
make a visit all around Albania.
We visit Belgrade and we enjoy the restaurants and we drink together. The friendships are, the best way to make friendships is not through work, but through drinking and doing these things which are considered not always as the best thing to do. So this is the story about the forum. These 2 conditions are of the type conditio sine qua non, must be conditions. But then there are 2 others. The Ministry of Culture or Science or whatever must give some money for the scanners. If you like to scan a book, if you open it and the book is 1,000 years old, forget about it. But there are scanners that you open just this little. You put the camera in, so you can scan it without destroying the book. So it's important to have that type of scanner and also a portable scanner that can run around to visit churches in small villages. And also a 3D scanner. The best technology is about $100,000 for the 3 scanners. We do have all that in Belgrade. And if you decide to port, then please bring the top 10 artifacts with you so we scan them there. And at the same time we teach the 2 PhD students how to use that type of scanning technology. This is the whole story, and this is where the whole idea came from. This is where I come from, 2,000 meters above sea level in Montenegro. My mother is from Serbia, but the father from Montenegro. And this is where I made all the slides for this one, for this presentation. You guess what you see when you come here? This is what you see. And now I'm available for questions or comments or suggestions. Thank you.
Are you waiting for discussions, comments?
I'm ready.
Or can you challenge to some questions also?
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's for you now. Yes.
Thank you very much for your really inspiring talk. I was wondering where your love for Albania comes from, because I saw your picture in
Sorry, what?
Your love for Albania, where you come from. Where your
The love for Albania.
Where that comes from, because I saw your picture in a wedding in Scotland.
Right.
Okay. And I was really impressed from your CV. It's extraordinary. Just a question. How much will this be? I will check also the Austria Forum. Luckily, I checked also the website, the Austria Forum.
Both Austria and Serbia or
No, the Austrian Forum. I sort of can handle some German, so I'm able to check it. Was really impressed. I was really impressed. But I just wonder how much will that Albanian Forum will be affected by availability of data? You know, we might be limited.
Yeah, okay. Good question. First about the love. Well, I mentioned in the beginning some of the basic reasons for my initial interest. But the love really came during those 5 years when I was coming and meeting with people, and I had the chance to see how really good and intelligent people you are. So that is the answer to the first part of the question. Now, as far as the second part of the question, you remember I told you, in Serbia Forum we have about, actually not about, but over 2 million pages of all kinds of stuff, mostly from books. It is not that my team did all the scanning of that. What we did, we went to the National Library, to the National Archive, to a dozen other institutions, and we told them, you probably have scanned so far lots of stuff, but nobody can see it. Even if it is on the internet, you are a very local entity. Give it all to us, bring it to us together, we give you the visibility. And you have all the control to remember the 4 axiomatic items of the primary level. Well, they trusted me and Herman, so they told us this is a good idea. So it's about 1.2 million of what we got ready to use, scanned by someone else before us. And the rest was done through an army of volunteers. Only 2 paid positions, the 2 PhD students. The others are volunteers, either young but strong retired professors. They have time and motive to go around. And also the young and non-motivated students who become quickly motivated if they see they can get some extra points in the classroom. Then they run and scan like crazy. So this is basically an army of volunteers that did the remaining 0.8. And from the technical point of view, it is the two PhD students who help the volunteers. As far as the seniors, retired professors, each one got an institution to take care about. For example, a Jewish professor, Jacob Shalom, very active in the Jewish Society of Serbia. So he organized a group of 20 Jewish students to do that stuff for the Jewish Museum. We offered the same to the Lay Sulema. Because in Serbia, remember, I didn't use the term Serbian Forum, but the Serbia Forum, which means digitizing and presenting everything that was generated on the territory of Serbia, no matter if it was generated by Serbs, or by Jews, or by Muslims, or maybe by Romans or Greeks. And that's why I suggest you use the term Albanian Forum. So now you understand how it works about the army of the volunteers. Takes some energy to organize them, but we do it fairly successfully. You choose who you work with, somebody who doesn't talk too much and works a lot, then it works. Did I answer your question? Yeah, excellent question, actually. Helped me shed much more light on the problem.
Yes.
I like the way in which you introduce yourself. I don't know how it works. By highlighting points in common. When you said
Can you
mixed
introduce
blood,
yourself, please?
mixed blood, right? And you mentioned some prominent Albanian political figures or certain, which reminded me of Ivan Andrić, Serbo-Croatian prize winner in literature, with his book Bridge on the Drina River. In that bridge,
Nobel laureate.
that's right, there is a very wide space where 4 communities, Serbs, they call them Orthodox, Eastern Serb, we call them Turkish, there are Muslims that is, Jews and normal people live in harmony. He won the Nobel Prize for this. You had 2 figures there, 1912 and 1993. 1912 is the prelude, Balkan Wars, of the 2 horrific World War I and II. 93 is the interlude, hopefully the end, when people will learn to live like, he called it kapia. The middle Greek is kapia. Now the question is, do you think the young generation of all these Balkan nations will see the day that they have another kapia? Thank you.
Well, the future is obviously in the young generation. We have to make sure they meet each other a lot. Because when they meet each other a lot, they start loving each other. Did you know, during the World War II, there was a poll among Americans, and about half of those polled believed that German people have horns. You understand? The propaganda was so strong. So what's important, the best way to fight against such evils is to bring people together, and that's why I really like internet. When I first taught my course in Škoda, I said for the first year I don't take the honorarium, I would pay 20 students from that class who got the best 20 grades to come to a conference in Montenegro. And for all of them, that was the first time. And each time I'm coming here, I'm bringing someone who never was in
You
Albania.
have taught for free.
Hmm?
You have taught for free.
Right.
Okay.
But while they give me some money, then I say, okay, I can try.
Can you collaborate with us in the same manner?
There must be some other value which is added on the top of it. If you decide to start with Albania Forum, then this is another value that brings me here more than what money can do. But we can discuss that. Back to your question about 1912. Are there some mathematicians here?
Yes.
Raise your hand.
Yes, me.
Uh-huh.
Petar, Professor.
Uh-huh. Someone asked me, oh, you have chosen only the years that you liked. And then, let me tell you what I did. The mathematicians know what's the Fourier transform.
Sure.
You do?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I asked a historian to label all years as far as Serbian history from 1800 till today. And for each year to give plus 3, plus 2, plus 1 or 0, depending on how unstable the year was. If you put, you get a vector. If you take a Fourier transform of that vector, you get a peak at what number? 27. And then someone asked me, how come 27? And there was a discussion, and the result and the outcome was this. You know, in certain regions, at certain time, some nations develop energy more than the others. That can be a financial energy, like in the case of Germans. It can be demographic energy, like in the case of Albanians. And then they like the form to follow and correspond to the new essence. And if these things don't go easily, peacefully, then you have the instability. So we have also the explanation which is mathematical, and also the explanation which is from the sociology point of view. Any other questions?
About this part, you mentioned that you have millions of entries there, millions of entries in your database. Most of it is text, and some of them is music and video pictures on this part. So let me add, you can answer. And then again, this heritage mining was very interesting to me. So I think that this is some subfield of text mining. Are you doing also some, in this heritage mining, some picture mining, music mining? What about also the old language? You said you are scanning, how are you searching through these things? Are some research?
Excellent questions. Thank you. Well, as far as the first part, in the case of Serbia Forum, most of the stuff is books and documents, like Tsar Dusan First Constitution, which is a piece of paper, some poems from some monasteries, one piece of paper. But most of the stuff are books, and we have very little music and video. In the case of Austria Forum, they have a better balance. If you like to get another point of view, which is the point of view of the Austria Forum, I think I can arrange that Professor Maurer also comes and gives a talk from his point of view. You know, when you shed light from two different sources, you see it better, not 2 times better, because of synergies. You see it maybe 4 times better. So that would be a good suggestion for a next talk on this subject. Ladies first.
Regarding the heritage culture, I was asking myself regarding, for example, if you thought about politicians that change data, they change evidence. For example, in the history of Albania, data or evidence might be, but in Italian, it can be. So, which make the decision, which is the right and which is the true and which is the false?
This is now a subject of research.
Thank you.
This is another excellent question. This is a subject of research. We try to mathematize that. You understand? But it can be used not only for history, it can be used for other stuff. For example, let me show you another example. Look at this here. If you have a part of the heritage portal related to sports, then you can see the following. You remember once upon a time there was a country called Yugoslavia, and they were pretty good in ball games. There are 4 games, there are 5 ball games at, in the Olympics. Now if you look how they did in the last World Mondial in each one of the 5 sports before we're falling apart, you see the following. They were number 1 in the world in basketball, which has 5 players. They were number 2 in volleyball, 6 players. They were the 3rd in water polo and handball, which is 7 players. And their position was minus infinity in soccer with 11 players. They didn't even qualify. If you put that question into a foreign type of heritage minor, and if you ask what will happen with if you have a team of 24 million, the answer is fall apart, which is really what happened, right? If you go back, you see where you have 2 players, so 1 player they are number 1 in the world, like Djokovic, Ana Ivanovic, Jelena Jankovic. By the way, you know about Djokovic?
Yeah.
His father told me they do have Albanian blood. They know about it. You know about Ana Ivanovic?
Yeah, she was number 1.
She's from Kući. Montenegro side of the Kući area. Kuć. They also know they do have some Albanian blood. Another number 1 in tennis was Jelena Jankovic. She is from the Škoda Lake. She also knows she has some Albanian blood. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for being here at the University of Marin. I am professor here. I'm very impressed of your cross-cultural dimension in your activity, and I think that's brought this cross-cultural project and collaboration to. I'd ask you in regard to the agreement you mentioned. There will be an agreement between the Albanian government and other partners, government, in regard to this project. And I think there are two issues in regard to this agreement or memorandum of understanding. And you were focused on administrative or technical issues of the project. Will the agreement consider some scientific points of this information put in this forum in regard to the truth and the historical references, since we speak on cultural and heritage of the society? And I think the forum will have to consider the human dimension of the situation in a hot region like Western Balkan. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for asking this. We have a small kind of a contract in the form of white paper, memorandum of understanding, to be signed by the Mathematical Institute of the Serbian Academy of Sciences that is hosting Serbia Forum, and the institution here, which will develop Albania Forum. That institution can be one of the universities, or it can be a unit in the ministry, or it can be a unit in the National Archive. It can be National Archive hosting all that. So you have to decide. And our text, this contract kind of, 2 pages, is kind of open, which means we give it to you, you read it. If you like something to be added or changed, that's okay. We don't care about details. What we care about is the spreading technology. And spreading the kind of understanding. So I guess one of you will be the contact point for this. May I know who will be? Probably.
Okay,
The right?
okay.
So here we'll probably talk with the major players in that domain of this nation. Then we decide something, and then we start.
Okay. What is? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Habib Haman. I'm the president of the Canadian Institute of Technology. I like history, I like culture, but also I like numbers and mathematics, physics. Unfortunately, history has nothing to do with mathematics. What you have taken here, 27, I can take 25 and do the same. And dig in history to find something that seems to be important and emphasize it. And if I'm locked, I will change the reference. Instead of taking the solar year, we'll take the lunar year, and so on. That's skating. And many people try to understand history with numbers and came to horoscopes, to predictions, Nostradamus, and so on. That's a game. I think as scientists, when we talk about history, culture, sociology, we have to be far away from numbers, otherwise we start to lose credibility. So the historical events are more complex than numbers. They are related to feeling, to attempts, initiatives, historical background, and events abroad, in North America, whatever. So I'm not very convinced of this. However, I congratulate you for this nice work about culture. It is very, very interesting. For not only for Serbia or for Balkans, but for humanity, because everything now should belong to humanity. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your comment. Let me tell you, my talk has 2 parts. One is about the infrastructure for presentation of heritage. For that part, I guess you have no comments. Just positive points, right? Very good. Now, the other one is about data mining and numbers. Maybe I should have said the same. If one reads the data mining books, one will see that data mining, you can do a number of things, and prediction is just one of the major 6 applications. But no book tells that the data mining will predict with probability of 100%. Data mining is a statistical domain, and it can just raise cautiousness, or it can just inspire people to think, you understand?
Find patterns.
Yeah, it finds patterns, and then it is up to those. Data mining is basically finding hidden knowledge in data. Once you have hidden knowledge, you can discuss prediction-related issues. Data mining cannot predict, of course, but it can raise issues based on the hidden patterns found. So everything what you have said is absolutely correct, and maybe I should have said the same. I somehow just assumed this is self-understanding. However, in this case, if it's 27 or some number bigger or smaller, that doesn't matter. What matters is that really, in each generation, some energy gets formed. And people have to kind of use that energy, and they use it one way or the other. So that was the point. Noticing the pattern related to generations after generations. But it's really good you had pointed to this.
That's true. Data mining is to emphasize some features. And this emphasis should be also in terms of historical events. I'm a professor of data mining.
Oh, you teach data mining, so you know.
So I know this very well. And I studied the history of battles, also other histories. And I found in data mining that
the probability to have a war increases if you have
the rate of
unemployment which is bigger. Because people, when they have nothing to do, they try to make problems. So if you read history, the data mining emphasizes this historical character. So you see here, I link data mining to historical events themselves and not the numbers. That's mine. Thank you again.
Thank you. Well, maybe we
propose-
the other topic. Yeah.
Can I propose you a coffee break, or you can continue? Propose to continue, and then we
In general, that's a good idea.
As you wish.
However, maybe since the second topic is much shorter,
Okay, as you like.
maybe we can take it right away and then
Okay.
we have a longer one. So, if you like to see my presentations, it is easy to get them. You go to Google, then you can type my name, but if you forget the correct spelling, then you just type Prof. VM.
VM or VM?
Like Veljko, Milutinoviç.
That part.
Right. And then it's the first hit. And then basically, then you go to the teaching part. And now we are doing one course on supercomputing, which I teach periodically not only in Belgrade but also in Siena, in Barcelona Supercomputing Center, at Purdue University in the United States, and now also at Stanford again. Last week I was at EPFL in Lausanne, and I saw two very bright Albanian students from Tirana. Okay, so we are going to this one and this one. Now, this is about a new type of supercomputing technology. Which can serve as a basis for what your two ministers and Bled suggested would be a good project to connect all Balkan countries.
Yeah. All pleasure.
Right. But now, I need your help. Go. Well, I expect good questions again from the data mining professor, but he's not here. Is he coming back? Perhaps. Is it his bag or somebody else's?
That's a little bad.
All computers that we have around belong to the category of control flow. What does that mean? That means you are writing a program to control the flow of data through the machine. Now, no matter how fast the computers today are, and no matter how parallel they can be, the process is extremely slow in its essence. Why? Because it's following the von Neumann paradigm. You fetch an instruction, you decode it, then you see you need a data item. You like to go get it. However, you first must get the address, you first must compute the address. And for that, you have to take the pieces from which you compose the address. And then you get the data item. And then you do the same for another one. And then you compute. Do you agree with me that the process is extremely slow?
On top of this, the heavy traffic. It's what most important.
A very slow process is in its essence. Now I'd like to talk to you about a new paradigm called data flow. Here you again write the program. But this time, the program is not controlling the flow of data through your computer. This time, the program configures your computer. So when data come in, it just goes quickly to your configured hardware. And you get the results 20 or 200 or 2,000 times faster. And at the same time, your electricity bills are about 20 times smaller. And your hardware is also about 20 times smaller. When we started this research about 19 years ago, it was extremely difficult to convince anyone in the world that this is a good concept. And it was that way until 3 years ago, when Schlumberger oil drilling purchased a $10 million machine. And then 2 years ago, JP Morgan, the big bank, purchased a machine worth about $100 million. And this year, Chicago Money Exchange started using that machine. And you will see the last photo in my presentation will be with Angela Merkel and David Cameron and the director of McSally, where I serve on the board, scientific advisory board. Because at the last CeBIT in Hanover, that was declared the most successful technology created in Europe. So, how is this connected to the cloud idea? Well, the smallest machines for universities are as cheap as $10,000. Cheaper than the chairs here. However, some specific knowledge is needed to develop applications. One thing we can do is we can all together be developing applications, having them on the cloud. So anyone who has that type of technology can download from the cloud and use it, without the need to go through the hassle of programming based on a different paradigm, which has to be. Now in Škoda, you have each year 20 students who know how to program data flow machines. And of course they can be helpful. Some of them are really brilliant. Genci Bergati, a lecturer from Škoda, is here with me, my good friend. I think he's now the major expert for data flow in Albania, and I'm sure he will be also happy to share his knowledge with you. So to make the long story short, once again, this technology is only for big data applications. What is big data? You know the term, some of you. For those who don't know the term was introduced by President Obama during his first presidential campaign, when he tried to describe that he will be putting lots of money into big data analysis that will help the mankind live better. Examples of big data, for example, all SMS messages created in Albania since the start of that system. That's billions. Another example of big data is all digitized movies on the internet. Lots of hidden knowledge there. Lots of room for data mining. But this is big data, huge amounts. And you cannot use the present-day computers, because they will take weeks or months to do the computation. So a new paradigm is needed. What I was telling about the advantages, it is not that you get either one or the other or the third one. You get all three at the same time. However, for all these nice numbers to happen, some conditions must hold. First, over 95% of the runtime of your application must be in loops. Programmers know how slow the loops can be. This technology basically takes a loop from software and moves it to hardware, philosophically speaking. It's also important that to have some usability of data. Once you bring data into that machine, if you don't have much usability and just use it once and then move it out, you don't get the speed ups. There must be some reusability, which is typical for many, many algorithms. for most of the algorithms. It must be big data in streaming. There are some issues related to latency, but what is important is that we are having a new programming model that has to be learned first. And also, compilation takes time, so this is mostly for write once, run many applications. Those that you write once, and you run it many times. Absolutely all software and hardware developed in Europe. The headquarters is in UK, and we have some small companies in Serbia that have developed important parts of the system software. And one Albanian also worked on this. Gilbert Tafa, from Omčin is his name, and he was the best PhD student of mine because he was able to publish 4 papers in IEEE journals, which is the top of our field, before he got PhD from Belgrade. Now he works in Pristina. And I like him really a lot. Now, you know that all supercomputers of the world are ranked using the so-called top 500 list, which uses a benchmark called the impact to compare them. Now, the top one is the Chinese Tianhe 2. 6 months ago it was Great Titan, 6 months ago was IBM Sequoia, then Japanese Gate. If you go down the list, down to number 500, you don't find a data flow machine. So the question is, how come? Am I telling the truth? Or maybe there is some condition added. Look at this. LINPACK is a toy benchmark. Toy. Very small. And data flow technology is for big data. In May last year, in the best journal of our profession, which is Communications of the ACM, I published a paper which explains the data flow approach and also shows on big data benchmarks that had this list used a big data benchmark rather than LINPACK, and had they been concerned not only with speed, but with the product of speed, electricity bills and size, the Maxeller machine, which is now the most successful data flow machine, will be ways before Great Titan. So in that, I have that one here, but I just didn't bring it to the classroom. It's in the director's office. May, IC Communications of the ACM, May last year, page 39. So they put the big picture of Great Titan and the small picture of Maxeller, and the results show it's much better on the big data benchmark. So, where do we find such applications? We find that in geophysics, where this is the speed up, in banking, where this is the speed up, in image analysis. Like New York City has millions of cameras. Wives in New York City will be very happy once the data flow technology comes there, because they will be able to track the husbands, how they move through the city. One machine is now sitting at Google, trying to see how it can be used for data mining from social networks, like who likes whom really and who pretends and things like that. Now this is engineering details, which I will skip. I will finish with an anecdote, with a set of anecdotes. It is well known from conferences. Computer engineers sometimes joke. They say, If you use Intel machine, which is a control flow type architecture of the multi-core type, few big cores. And if you are using like a dual core Intel, this is like plowing with two horses. And the question is, which way are the horses going? You put your wishes into a program that you write. You put that program into the head of the plower, the driver, and his brain will understand it because the brain is equipped with von Neumann constructs and will be able to understand it fast because of the caches and predictors and things like that. Now, a very popular type of computer architecture today is NVIDIA. Also a control flow, but not multi-core like Intel, not few big cores, but many small cores. And people sometimes joke, using NVIDIA is like plowing with 2,000 chickens rather than 2 horses, right? And the question is, what is better? That depends on the application. There is an anecdote which I sometimes tell to my students. I can tell it now.
Yeah.
A professor from Belgrade was visiting some company somewhere in the West, and he negotiated a consulting contract to solve the problem. But they told him, Professor, the problem is extremely difficult. There is no way you can solve it alone. The only way to solve it is to find a PhD student with an IQ 180. Well, as soon as he came back, as soon as he landed, he ran to the student office and asked the lady in charge if she can find a student with IQ 180. She told him, I'm busy now, but I will call you later. 3 days later, she calls, and she tells him, Professor, I was not able to find anyone with 180. But what I can do for you, I can offer you 2 guys, each one 90. But it is the same story here. Everything depends on the application. If you have to move those chairs to another building, 2 guys of 90, chicken will do better. You understand? If you have to solve partial differential equations, then this will do better. Well, the question is what we do in the case of data flow. What do we plow with? Let's see. Ants. About 2 million ants. And each ant carries a backpack full of data. So what we do, we download the backpacks of the ants. Then our engineers do the programming which configures the hardware. The technology used is called field programmable gate arrays. And then you have to make sure that the ants go this way. Because you remember, by passing through the hardware, they generate the result. But how you make sure the ants go the way you like, not this way or this way or this way? You know how are the ants. Well, if you want them to go this way, you have to put a bowl of marmalade on the other side of the field. What does the marmalade symbolize? The voltage difference between input and output. What drives data to the hardware is not a program. It is the voltage difference. This is why they go so quickly. You understand? So they smell. The electrons sense the voltage difference. They go and they produce the results. So why data flow so much faster? Because we compile to lower levels. Control flow compiles down to machine code. We compile down to gates and transistors and wires. Why are the electricity bills so much smaller? This is the formula that your Minister of Energy uses each month to figure out who pays how much at the end of the month. So no matter if you use multi-core or many-core, K and U are the same. What differs is the frequency. Intel now works at 4 gigahertz. Maxella works at 200 megahertz. If you divide 4 giga, which is 4,000 mega, with 20 mega, you get how much? 20. In October last year, I visited the major 3 supercomputing centers of Germany. In Munich, HLRC, in Stuttgart, HRS, and in Heidelberg, which is linked to Munich. Now, the general director told me in Stuttgart, they pay 50 million euros each year for electricity. Did any of you visit the supercomputing center of Stuttgart? It's a huge building. I don't think there is such a big building in Serbia. And the subtitle of my talk was how to create 1,000 new jobs for PhD students at no additional cost on the shoulders of the taxpayers. You know why? I calculated. If they move from control flow to this technology that I'm kind of preaching, then the bills become 20 times smaller. From 50,000, you go down to 2.5. You save how much? 47.5. Then I calculated in Germany how much they pay PhD students, and the fringe benefits, and the fee, and you easily come to a number which is much higher than 1,000. Why is the qubit foot so much smaller? This is von Neumann technology, only 5% of the chip area for data processing. And this is the FPGA technology, 95. 95 divided by 5 is how much? 19, close enough. And now to make the long story short, I have more anecdotes here. The question is, who is the fastest? If this angle here tells about the level of sophistication of the application, then the horse is the fastest. Well, if you are using benchmarks that favorize NVIDIA over Intel, then horses cannot run all the way to Jezeca, right? But the major question here is who only is able to run over a vertical wall, right? Big data. This is how the smallest university machine looks. Since 4 of them come here, this is what we have in Belgrade, and until you get your own, you can log in free of charge to our Belgrade machine and use it. And this is like a rack. And in JP Morgan, there is a chain of racks. Now, this is about the applications, business, data mining, and science. Let's show the examples. This is what JP Morgan is doing. You know the story about JP Morgan? When you get a credit card from your bank, the credit card is not yours, neither the bank's. You own only the plastic. The owner of the concept is who? Visa, MasterCard, American Express. Who is the owner of all three? JP Morgan. And each day on the whole world, you have about 1 billion credit card transactions. Each night after that, JP Morgan processes all that for data mining and for accounting, credit derivatives. There are some people from economy here. So 9% of that is now done with the data flow as a trial. This is from Schlumberger. The story about Schlumberger is the same as about JP Morgan. All big oil companies know how to drill. Only Schlumberger knows where to drill. How? They have a vessel. And that vessel has a sonar, like a water gun that shoots down. Some of that bounces off the ocean bottom. The rest bounces off the lower layers, including oil and gas. And then so this is what happens. These people from Chevron calculated data flow was 30 times faster compared to Intel of the same price. And the electricity bill was 10 times smaller because Intel was 1.5 giga. This is for the speed ups on surface reflection, on some seismic stuff, the weather forecast. One of the best applications is for the weather forecast. You know how that works. You in Albania, in many places, you collect weather data. Then all that goes to a central institution in the States. They process that, but only half. And your national center takes the semi-processed stuff and computes the local weather forecast with some supercomputer. In this case, you can, and then you make errors. Because the best algorithm for the 24-hour prognosis now takes 100 hours to compute. This way, you compute for 100 minutes. This is the best speed up that the Serbian brain was able to get. Smith Waterman from the University of Tokyo, staff from Spain, from Berkeley. But the acceleration is hard. One has to know how to program that stuff. So now, to make the long story short, I will run through this quickly without mentioning everything. Hints for programmers and stuff like that. This is the European projects that we used so far. And this is the this is the map for one of the projects. A company in Tirana got a software simulator. That's why it's here. We decided in the beginning to move that technology mostly to Balkans because Balkan forgives errors. But after we got to the child diseases, we are moving more to Germany, UK, and the rest. This is another European project. Again, all my ideas get born here. In Belgrade, I'm not able to function. Too much noise. This is about, this is a research institute from UK showing that one accelerator machine substitutes 12,086s and is for them better than the top person on Green 500 today. And this is the current family. And this is the picture I announced in the beginning. Oscar was a student of mine in a kind of small course that I gave 19 years ago, organized by some people from Stanford at the time when he was a Stanford PhD. And this is a nice anecdote to finish. At that time I was talking about what was the state of the art in supercomputing of those days, distributed shared memory, message passing. After the talk, one kid came in and he told me, "Professor, you look like a smart guy, but what you are telling about is nonsense." How come? He said, "That's not a way for scientific data to achieve exascale speeds." The term big data did not exist in those days. I started to argue. He said, "I don't want to waste time. You either help me or we go play tennis." Then I said, "Okay, I will help you, but how you compensate me for my time?" He said, "Well, I am a student, I don't have money. But once I make the company, I will give you a part of the ownership if I see you are a successful helper." I said, "You have a deal." And for 19 years, it was real, lots of hard work. And nobody believed the story until, well, 3 or 4 years ago. And this is the epilogue as of March the 13th, when this is Oscar. By the way, Oscar grew up without parents. For a part of his life, he was protected by the orphanage system of Austria. And basically, he's the major driver of the success. And also the 60% owner, at least. And when I asked him, "How come you grew up in such a poverty without parents and you are able to talk to people who have billions in their pockets?" He told me, and this is probably the best way to start, the major problem of poor people is not the fact that they don't have money. The major problem of poor people is the fact that they have a poor people mentality. Thank you. This is not a photo montage. You see it on the website of the Angela Merkel also. This, if you go to their portal, you see all that stuff. And one of the papers, actually the only paper on their portal is the paper I mentioned.
Okay. Is there any question or yes?
Again, I have a question. I'm introducing myself the son of Leviona. He's a student. Leviona Nishani, PhD student, and in security, mobile security,
Computer science.
Computer science, yes. I was questioning myself about your personal opinion regarding quantum computers. What do you think about? And is there fundamentally possible, or they will remain opaque?
The question was about quantum computers. And what is my personal opinion? Well, recently I tried to learn something. And basically, I realized, in essence, a quantum computer is the same as the phone, as a Turing machine. Why? In Turing machine, you have only 2 instructions. One is skip on condition, and the other one is increment. And someone proved that each and every algorithm of the universe can be written with these two instructions, right? In the case of quantum computer, you again have only two instructions. Quantum computers are accelerators. So the host either calls it or skips it on some condition. So one instruction is skip on condition. And the other one is find the minimum of a function which is described with 10 to the power of 52 bits. Equivalent of qubits. And all that in one tick. Now, for applications that can easily map into these two instructions, like cryptography, you get speed-ups which are zillions of times better compared to control flow or data flow. The question, however, is that only a relatively small set of real applications can be mapped on these two instructions. And actually, I'm looking for a real good PhD student to give him that problem, to solve the mapping problem for quantum computers. If we can, the question is, we know each algorithm can be developed with the two instructions of the Turing machine. We need a mathematical proof showing if and under what conditions an algorithm can be mapped into the two instructions of the quantum computer. One mathematical approach is to prove that with an instruction that finds a minimum, you can implement an increment. But that will not be a valid proof because of the overhead, complexity overhead. So if some of you find out the solution, I think that this is good enough for the Fields medal. There is no Nobel Prize for mathematics, but there is the Fields medal.
What about the future? If they are going to be implemented?
The future is in your hands. The future is in the hands of business students.
Any other?
Any others?
Three short questions. The first, about big data. I have some big data. Let's say I want to do some social network analysis. I have over 1 million edges. I cannot do it on my computer. You mentioned this cloud. Can I do it free of charge? So upon my data install Python if I need or something else?
Let me tell you, free of charge, you can log into the Max Heller machine that exists in the Serbian Academy of Sciences in the Mathematical Institute. Now, as far as the programming, nobody ever wrote a program doing exactly what you wish to do. That means someone has to write it. If it is you, then after you finish it, you have a choice. Either to put it on cloud for the whole universe to use it, or to put it on cloud for the whole universe to use it for money. That's up to you. But if we do together a project, which now BED is coordinating, then this can be your contribution.
Okay, my second question was about your example. Somewhere about this mapper you mentioned. Is there an example of ETL process using this data flow?
When you say
ETL extract, transform, and load the data from different data sources, integrate them, and load the transform to some end data, some target data.
in this case, it is just a data stream coming from some database. A data stream with some
Not from different data sources. Okay, and the question But there is no example. Okay, and the third question, this new model in the programming model, is this taught in universities?
I told you before that.
Which model? But other universities?
We can talk later.
Yes. And I thank you, Professor Milutinoviç, being with us for his speech lectures and ideas and discussions. And I hope and I wish to cooperate and collaborate with us. Thank you, and I invite all of you to take a coffee now. Yes?